Students who have dated their teachers, what's your story? So, I dated a law professor during the summer break after my first year. She was the spitting image of Lilith Sternin from Cheers in looks, dress, and mannerisms. She had 20 years on me and was not someone I would have considered attractive at that stage of my life. It would be safe to say she was not well liked by most students. She had just gone through a very brutal and very public divorce. As I was walking out of class, she was standing at the lectern with a 1,000-yard stare and looking utterly dejected. I talked her into hitting the bar with some extra students and a couple of professors. She got loose, I got loose, and we spent the next 3 months tooling around and effing like bunnies. I blew off a summer internship to go screw around, which is probably why I ended up being a career public attorney, or not. Looking back, it was one of the happiest and most satisfying parts of my life. Broke it off amicably and remained friends right up until the time she succumbed to terminal illness a few years ago. Next story. Had a huge crush on my high school gym teacher. A few years after graduation, Facebook came out and I looked him up. And still super hot. We met up for a few drinks, then a week later he invited me to his place for dinner. It was a one-time thing and it was effing awesome. Although now, almost 10 years later, he'll still text me thirsty as all hell. No regrets. Next story. I turned 18 my senior year. My German teacher and I were always flirty before that, though. He was married my junior year, but divorced by my senior year. I slept with him 3 times, found out I had chlamydia, confronted him about it, and he effing knew about it. I got mine all cleared up, and now he's married to some chick, probably still with chlamydia, and teaching English over in Dubai. Next story. I dated a TA when I was in college. It really wasn't too big a deal. She didn't grade the final paper, and most of the tests, quizzes were multiple choice fill in the blank, so there really wasn't any way for her to show me preferential treatment. Just sat and listened to her read through the professor's PowerPoint slides and answer questions. We didn't tell the professor or anyone in the class, but we weren't exactly secretive either. I doubt anyone would have cared, though. It didn't really have a hot for teacher vibe, but the first few weeks were kind of fun stealing glances and such. Next story. Not so much dated, but she was my 8th grade English teacher. She and her husband had a house on the lake where I lived. Her husband worked all week and would only come down on the weekends. My friend and I saw her one day while skiing. She asked us to stop by later that evening. She had beer. She was in her early 30s, and that night we just talked about the previous school year. And my friend and I got drunk and passed out on her couch. She asked us back that evening. We grabbed a beer and she whispered to me, "Don't drink too much tonight." When my friend passed out on the couch, she asked if I wanted to go to the bedroom with her. Of course I did. We had sex 3 or 4 times a week for the next 2 months, a couple of times twice a day. After the summer was over, I went to high school, a different school, 9th grade, and never saw her again. The next summer, we went by her lake house and someone else answered the door. She had sold it. Yeah, do you think she maybe sold it because she was a predator? Do you think that could have had something to do with it, guys? I don't know. I remember a few months ago we were reading stories about drama at school, and middle schooler, high schooler dated one of the teachers, and OP was so nonchalant about it, and everyone in the comments was like, "Hey, this is illegal," but then some people in the comments were like, "Well, that's just what happens in small town America." So I guess out in the Midwest you just date minors. I don't know. No. Next story. So, I dated my high school history teacher year after graduating high school. We're still together 5 years later. It was awkward with my high school friends once we came out, but he is the best man I've ever met and I'll definitely be with him forever. He's 10 years older than me, so we still have lots in common. I'd say the worst part is that going back to our hometown, we still get so many dirty looks. Wish they could just be happy for us. Next story. I slept with my student once. I was her TA for organic chemistry. She was 21, I was 23. The sex was stellar, and I told the professor of the lab that I couldn't be responsible for grading her paper. He gave me a wink and told me that's how he met his husband. So, yeah, then we broke up at the end of the course, but I'll always remember her as the girl who ended my slump. Next story. When I was a sophomore in high school, I started hooking up with my early 20s substitute teacher. It was a weird time in my life and at that point, a huge fantasy of mine, as it might be for other teenage boys. It started in my algebra class. I was the resident class clown and talked crap for no reason other than interrupting the flow of class, and she was really hot. and my friends and I were discussing her features when I decided it was a good idea to strike up a conversation with her. This was mostly to impress my friends, and I didn't recognize that she would react to my hitting on her. I think I asked her if she wanted to get a burrito for lunch one day, and she responded with, "Talk to me after class." My friends thought I was in deep crap, but the way she looked me in the eye and engaged seemed out of the ordinary. Fast forward a couple of weeks, she is still subbing my class, and we have hung out a couple of times, hikes and food and the like. Frankly, I was astounded by these turn of events and was in somewhat of a confused stupor. I didn't really pick up on her advances until my birthday, though, when she invited me to her house and gave me an eighth of purple and a vibrating Wang ring. She said we should use it sometime. I was freaking out inside but trying to act like Cary Grant or something. She informed that her biggest fantasy was to have a student go down on her while she wore her teaching clothes. I obliged in a very clumsy manner, to say the least. I stupidly broke up with my girlfriend of a year and began to invest time into this odd situation. And she was a Diablo Cody sort of character. She was a stripper on the side and had several sugar daddies that would take her on vacation but would not be allowed to touch her. I would see her downtown with these dudes and have to pretend like I didn't know her. She introduced me to Arrested Development, Mr. Show, and other comedic stuff that shaped my interests nowadays. She wanted to write about her experiences, and I agreed that it would make a good story, like I'm doing now, I guess. Oh, also, she had a sex swing. Eventually, though, my mom caught wind of this and eventually got her teaching credentials stripped. She didn't get into any legal trouble, but definitely stopped talking to me. I'm friends with her on Facebook, and I think she does improv in New York City and not much else. I've never written about this, and I kind of forgot about it, to be real. I was stoked at the time, but looking back, it was pretty inappropriate. Next story. Dated and married my general chemistry TA. Nothing scandalous, though. We didn't start dating until a couple of years after the class ended. I had a huge crush on him throughout, and we would run into each other a bit on campus and chat. Eventually, we saw each other intentionally, then dated. During the class, I did go to a lot of tutoring, digging through my textbook for obscure crap to ask him. He's a good man, though. He always redirected our conversations back to chemistry when I'd try to get off topic. We laugh now, though, because it was super obvious, and I actually did learn a lot from him. Next story. I had a brief sexual relationship with a college professor while I was taking a course she taught. I was studying an engineering discipline in college and getting a minor in literature, and she taught one of the literature courses on offer at our university. Junior year, I was 20 years old at the time, I was in her course, and the first few weeks nothing notable happened. Then, the week after we submitted our first essay, she tapped me on the arm as I was leaving the class and asked me to stop by her office hours to discuss the essay I had submitted. I dropped by her office later that day, and she basically told me, "This is one of the best essays I've ever read." She said she had heard from a college who also teaches literature courses, which I had taken the previous year, and she said, "You are a strong writer, but this was great. Have you considered doing anything with writing?" And we talked for a while about my aspirations related to writing, and then we talked about writing in general and some of the things we liked about books unrelated to the curriculum that we both had read. And since I was in engineering, I actually didn't have many people to discuss literature with, so I stopped by her office a few times over the next couple of weeks to just shoot the crap with her. I'm not gonna lie, she was not a bad-looking lady, but I hadn't really been thinking about her that way. She was in her early 40s, which is much older than I normally go for, until one day we were in her office, well past the end of her office hours, and she told me that she had to go home to feed her dog and asked if I would like to join her. And that was forward enough that I got the hint and accepted her offer. And you can fill in the blanks about what happened from there. For the rest of the semester, I'd go over to her house once or twice a week, a little ways off of campus, and we'd drink wine, talk about books, politics, ethics, all of that high-strung cerebral crap that you pay attention to when you're in the deep world of academia, and then we'd bang for a while. After the semester ended, I went off to work an internship, and when I came back the next year, I stopped by her office to talk to her every now and then, but never re-engaged romantically with her. We had a lot in common, a different time and different circumstances, and I think we might have had a future, but not that way. I had a life to build, and she was already living hers. The one thing that I never really considered at the time was the idea that our relationship might be improper. I was going to ace the course anyway. It wasn't an upper-level course or anything with a really high bar for composition. Just a few solid papers and good attendance was enough to net you an A. But I could see how we might have needed to be a little cloak and dagger about the whole thing. I am not the type of person to talk about this sort of thing in real life either. Only blast it out over the internet while I'm semi-anonymous. Next story. My story is a little bit different from the ones I've read here. I entered one of Brazil's most prestigious law schools when I was 18 years old. On my first party, fresh out of high school, I met this beautiful girl who was 23 and on her last semester. We hooked up a few times, but nothing too much. A couple of weeks later, I drunkenly hooked up with a classmate and ended up dating her for 4 years. Fast forward to my final year, and who is the professor? The same girl I had hooked up with when I got into university. She had graduated, gotten her LLM, and was finishing up her PhD thesis. A couple of weeks after my classes had restarted, I broke up with my girlfriend and went on a night out with my high school friends. So no one from uni was there with me. It was carnival, so 5 days of parties. And we hooked up again, and again, and again. We ended up kissing only each other during carnival. And just to specify why that point is so important, all of my friends kissed like 20 to 30 girls each. Then, 1 week later, I had classes with her. It was awesome. Everyone joked us because of our previous relationship, not having any idea that we were seeing each other again, and that was in 2009. 8 years later, we're still stupidly in love together with 2 boys, 3 and 1, and a girl on the way. I had graduated with honors, got a master's degree, and I'm now studying to get my PhD. And sorry for my English since it is not my native language. But the TLDR is hooked up with a senior as a freshman. She graduated and became my professor, and then we hooked up again and got married. Next story. He was an intern teacher. Last year of university, he was pretty much a teacher by then. He was 24, I was 17. Last year of high school, we waited till summer to start hanging out, but we clearly already had a crush on each other in class. And I thought I was mature at the time, but in retrospect, I wasn't really. I looked up to him and was devastated when his views did not align with mine. Sex wasn't great because I did not know what I liked and did not know what to talk about. It was an okay relationship that lasted 2 years, but I always felt like I was not old enough for the relationship, for his friends, for his parents, etc. Then I was studying to become a teacher too, and we had a discussion about dating students that made me very uncomfortable. I went in a class, looked at their kids that were 4 or 5 years younger than me, and decided it as very weird to fall for one. And so we split. He's still dating a girl like 10 years younger than him. I'm 25, and I think 19-year-olds are very immature kids, and I would not want one as a partner. It was good while it lasted, but I'm still weirded out. Would not recommend. Next story. My friend wouldn't date her teacher. He was married. Even though his wife was down with it, my friend constantly had to turn him down. They became friends, and she went to hang out with him and his wife one night. After one drink, she noticed that she was way drunker than she should be. She left immediately and came home to talk to me. Her housemate, my ex, had been roofied 2 times in Ottawa, so my experience told me that she was probably dosed with something and that it was very good that she left at the first sign of trouble. So girls, I feel sorry for you, having to put up with this kind of crap. What's worse is that his wife was in on it, helping him take advantage of a student. He now has a son. I really hope he does things right and teaches his son to be better than himself. Somehow. Next story. In 11th grade, my math teacher and I were madly in love. She was 24 and I was 17, and one day she told me to stay after class when normally I would go to lunch. Once we were alone, she told me she had dreamed about me the night before and asked if I was serious with my girlfriend. One thing led to another, and I fell deeply in love with her. One day, her husband showed up to class to drop off some keys to her, and I was so scared. This was in 1997, so I didn't have a cell phone, but just a pager. But she would send me encoded messages. The number 17 meant she was thinking about something we had done. 10 meant she missed me. 314 meant to go to her classroom. The doors all had glass windows on them, but hers was covered in math facts, so the room had privacy. It was a very good year. So everybody, this is a grooming video, right? Like that's what this that's I shouldn't laugh, but it's, we're getting light grooming vibes here. Which I guess is to be expected given the criteria. Breaking news, fork found in kitchen, grooming found in school. Just what a surprise. Anyway, next story. So, I dated my college professor in my last few weeks of the final semester. She was extremely timid and shy, yet strangely attractive. I decided to ask her out after class one day to see what she would say. She told me it's an inappropriate thing to ask a teacher in school, and that she would see me next week. Then she emailed me later that evening from her personal email saying that she couldn't answer me properly at the time, but that she was down to go on a date. So we went on a few dates, got a few dinners, got for a few drinks, etc. However, it did not last as long as we were too incompatible on a personal level. Opposite ends of the personality spectrum, I guess. I broke it off after 6 to 7 weeks, and she didn't take it well. Luckily for me, I never saw her again, or had to have a piece of work graded by her, although the way it ended did stop me from returning to the school to give a presentation about my dissertation to one of the classes. Definitely did not want to risk that extremely awkward situation. Next story. Currently dating my former high school chemistry teacher, if that counts. He was very popular amongst students then and still is now. even after he quit last year. It's only an 8-year difference, and we never really talked when I had his class his first year of teaching. But long story short, teachers tend to be good at putting up a front in regards to their anxiety and their depression. Next story. So, I dated my high school English professor. There was a 15-year difference. It was after I graduated, and before I graduated, we had some sort of a relationship. We never talked about inappropriate things, but I suppose the fact that we spoke at all would be considered inappropriate. But the fact is, I struggled with depression my sophomore year, and he was the only one to recognize it and ask me if I was okay. Honestly, my best friend for several years, and we chatted constantly. Then a couple of weeks after I graduated, we took a trip a couple of hours away. I think I kind of thought there would be flirting involved, but I never thought it would turn out the way it did. We eventually had a really great day, going to parks and comic stores and dinner. After dinner, we got ice cream and sat down. He rubbed my shoulders and kissed my forehead, and I remember him saying, "I think we both know how this is going to end up if we hang out more." And he left for a trip to London for a couple of days afterwards. When he came back, we saw each other again and started sleeping together. He would drive up to my college apartment almost every weekend to spend time with me. Eventually, things fell apart about after a year. I needed more, and we both knew this was only a temporary thing, despite us both expressing more than sexual feelings for one another. Things soured once my new boyfriend, now an ex, couldn't deal with us still talking because we were still best friends, and threatened him without me knowing. We didn't talk for a couple of years. My husband now knows, and he doesn't particularly care about me speaking with him, but now he's also about to get married, and I guess his fiancé would have a problem, and I guess that's understandable. But we saw each other over the weekend. We were at the same concert, we briefly made eye contact and waved, but it made me feel really sad. Although I am completely and 100% in love with and dedicated to my husband, I still mourn losing a friend who got me through so much. Although the dating was really fun, I knew it would end, but back then, I just never thought that our friendship would cease. Next story. So, wasn't my actual professor. He taught computer networking, and I was in a liberal arts program. However, he was asked to do a workshop for our class. He had past experiences with sound effects and makeup, and I was chosen as a volunteer to help him sculpt stuff. So, went over to his place a few evenings, did the workshop, and a couple of weeks later, we were pretty much dating. I was 22 at the time, so personally, I don't consider it very taboo, and I'm glad to have met him. So, how old do you guys think he was? He was 40, right? He was 50, right? That was a 60-year-old man you were boinking, weren't you? She mentioned her age. She didn't say his. I love when Redditors leave out sometimes key, crucial, or important details because there's a lot to glean from that sometimes. It's probably a nothing burger here, but you'll notice sometimes Redditors like to leave out the information you want the most. Anyway, next story. So, I am dating my self-defense instructor. I'm in my mid-20s and he's in his early 30s, so the age difference is bigger than what I'm used to, but we're still well within the age 2 + 7 rule. Whenever I take one-on-one classes, though, with someone with like a 20-year age gap, there's like a 50% chance I'll get a crush on them regardless of sex. It's kind of pathetic. I'm so used to it at this point, usually I just ignore it. I guess there's something really hot about seeing someone who's really talented at something I wish I was better at. Next story. Had an emotional affair all through senior year of prep/boarding school with my beautiful English teacher. She was 9 years old, petite, delicate, long, straight black hair, pale, translucent skin. She was lonely and felt vulnerable at the mostly male school. I was obsessed with her, and it turned out the feeling was mutual. But we kept the physical dimension at bay until graduation night, when she pulled me out of a party and into the darkness outside and said she couldn't stop wondering what it would be like to kiss me. And off we went. And I just cannot tell you how explosive it was to finally go at it with an ideal figure you've been fantasizing about forever, but mostly experienced in a professional, distant capacity. When the clothes came off, it was just transcendent. We dated for 2 years, and she would drive up to see me in college on the weekends, and we would check into a $14 motel room and spend hours just undressing each other. Unbelievable sex. And at that age, I was in unlimited, insatiable mode all the time. And then it would wind down because she was very wrapped up in an obscure academic career and the lives and fates of fringe 18th century poets, and pretty much expected me to share her sensibilities. And it turned out she had a younger sister with Downs who would require lifetime care, and she was quietly making plans for her and me as a team to shoulder the burden. I was 19, so we parted as friends, more or less, but did not stay in touch. I know she went on to be a lit professor at a prestigious university, married another academic, and had a couple of very highfalutin books published. So, student-teacher sex, though, is always characterized these days as damaging and borderline assault, abusive to the student, etc. But I can tell you, this relationship was one of the best things that ever happened to me, in bed and out of it. I was unbelievably lucky. Next story. So, I dated one of my TAs early in college. She was very, very pretty, and I thought I had no chance. During review sessions, I would give her a hard time, and apparently she found it funny and charming. Who knew? Because she asked me out as the semester wound down. She helped me on my final paper a little bit, but she also took my virginity. So it was a nice end to the semester for that class. Next story. So, wasn't me, but when I was in military school, one of the seniors hooked up with the social studies teacher on a weekend-long field trip. Long story short, his buddy wanted to get in on the action too, and when she refused, he told on them. She got fired, but the kid was 18, so no legal trouble. I know she was married too, so probably not anymore. Next story. My sister, 17, who could do no wrong. I'm not bitter, you're bitter. She started spending a little too much time with her basketball coach/English teacher. 40s. We lived with different parents and I never liked her, so I didn't pay much attention. But then, one Christmas, she just leaves to go spend part of Christmas with him, his wife, and his children. Dad caught on, Mom ignored it. After graduation, they started dating and he divorced his wife. They got married without telling anyone, and unsurprisingly, the family was not happy. But sister still didn't see anything wrong. But then he became emotionally, maybe physically abusive. She never said it outright, but it was obvious. She did the whole leave and go back thing multiple times. She's currently with a roommate of a year or so out of his house and dating a new guy. 50 years old, but I don't think they're technically divorced though. Her official statement for the breakup was that he didn't want more kids. Next story. Took a French immersion and flight attendant course when I was 22, and the French teacher was a 35-year-old Acadian, Eastern Canada French, very attractive musician with an accent and perfect hair. I was top of my class and the most mature student he had. Everyone thought he was gorgeous, and I made extra effort to chat with him after class to get to know him. After the course, I took the risk to ask if he wanted to get coffee. I said as friends, but I really wanted to get behind a zipper. And so a couple of coffees and drinks later, we were sleeping together. It lasted a summer, then we broke it off. When it ended, I was determined to rebound, so I asked my current boyfriend out for drinks, and now we are buying a condo together. The best story from that summer was when he left for 2 weeks to teach a camp and left his fleshlight out in his dish rack to dry. This was 3 to 4 weeks in. Then realized his parents were going to stay at his place while he was away. So to avoid the super embarrassment of explaining that to his elderly mother, he asked me to go move it, and I made it only slightly embarrassing for him. Next story. I don't know if I would call it dating, but we became friends, and then it got weird. He was my summer class professor. The class he was teaching was all about radio and how it changed communication. I was the only one in the class who grew up listening to the radio, apparently, so we had a lot of things to talk about. He let me know that he had the key to the big auditorium on campus and asked if I wanted to sneak in during the weekend to watch The Godfather Part 2, and I was like, yeah, so we did, and we hung out a few more times after that. Then he got super drunk one night and cried and said that he feels closer to me than most of the other people in his life. I hugged him, and he tried to turn the hug into something more, but I gently let him know that this was not a good idea. He was a little hurt, but we got over it. Now he's a friend I talk to every now and then, but I will always love our weird and awkward friendship. Next story. I've posted about this before, but I'll do it again. 18 years old. I took another girl to prom. While there, the guitar teacher, let's call him Mr. Stewart, is chaperoning and asks for a picture with us. He was taking pictures with everyone, and he had started chatting with my date when I was in the bathroom. He posts the photo he took to Facebook and adds me as a friend. He had lots of student friends, all of the alternative, edgy kids. I accepted the request and liked the photo and commented something on it. Then he sends me a private message. We start messaging. Mr. Stewart tells me I can come and hang out at the study hall he supervises during my early release period. I start doing that. He seems really cool and nice. He learns I hate my retail job and offers me a job as his secretary at the music studio he owns. He just gave music lessons and recorded his own crap for YouTube, and he offers to drive me every day to work since I don't have a car, I can't drive, and my parents refuse to drive me the 25 minutes it takes to get there. My parents, though, they're totally fine with this. I quit my job and I start working for him. It's about 3 weeks to graduation at this point. Mr. Stewart is a pretty crappy and scatterbrained business owner, so so I make a lot of improvements to the organization and running of the place. I help clean and redecorate the studio, paint a mural on a blank wall, make new curtains for the windows, and supervise some of the teens who would come in to rehearse with their bands. And I am doing really good work, I'm feeling super valued, plus I am making bank. Mr. Stewart then starts saying flirty things from time to time about how I'm really pretty and really cute and really valuable to him, and how he's never met anyone like me, yada yada yada. Then, a week before graduation, Mr. Stewart starts putting his hand on my leg in the car on the way back from work. Then he starts kissing me on the forehead before I get out of the car. We've been having personal discussions about things, etc., and I'm incredibly flattered that this cool guy is interested in me in that way. Then, literally the day after graduation, he starts getting more intimate. He asks me for chest rubs. He starts going further up my leg with his hand, etc. Eventually, we start going back to his house after work. He didn't even have a house. He rented a room in some schmo's apartment. If the schmo was awake, Mr. Stewart and I would fool around in the car. Then we started going inside. Then we started going to his bedroom. I never touched his junk. He was always servicing me. Sometimes he would rub against me without actual penetration until he climaxed. I remember it was scary because when he did this, he would grunt like a wild animal. I was a virgin and he insisted he didn't want to be my first. And my parents, they had literally no clue this was going on. I was coming home at 11 p.m. or midnight and telling them that we had stayed late at the studio so he could record stuff, occasionally true. I was so infatuated with Mr. Stewart and was really sad I had to go to college and leave. He promised I could have my job back during breaks, but then made some excuse that they couldn't afford to pay me. He took me to see some random local band on my last day of work and then we fooled around. When I met my current boyfriend in October of my freshman year though, I asked him to get tested for STDs before we had unprotected sex. He came back positive for chlamydia, so either his ex lied about her post-breakup test being clean, or Mr. Stewart gave me chlamydia. But the following summer, I'm working another crap job, and some kids from the music studio come in. I learned that he had offered the receptionist job to the girlfriend of one of the kids, who was 18 and looked even younger than me. So he was just a pervert after all who used the high school as his hunting ground and knew how to cover his ass. I had asked him straight out at one point when I worked for him if he was planning on seducing me when he offered me the job, and if he had ever done this kind of thing before, and he had denied both things. And now these days, he still works at the high school, but I think his business collapsed. I took him off my resumes ages ago, and I feel really effing gross thinking back on it. I knew exactly what was happening the entire time. I've seen pretty much every episode of Special Victims Unit, but I went with it anyway, thinking that it was more than just grooming. Oh, and he was 57, older than my father, and has a daughter who is at least 5 years older than me. Next story. So, I never did anything with the teacher, but if I hadn't been a 12-year-old with a laptop who overexposed herself to crime documentaries, something may have happened. When I was in grade 7 or 8, we got a new teacher partway through the year. He was really nice and quite attractive. He was married and had a son who was about a year younger than me. A lot of the girls, they had crushes on him, and I got along with him really well. And he was one of the first teachers I remembered who I liked to have conversations with. He was witty and sarcastic, had a sense of humor I picked up and still sticks with me to this day. And what it took 12-year-old me to figure out was how he would treat me different than the other students. He would give me extra time on assignments, spend more time with my group of friends on field trips, would take any opportunity he could to touch me. Not sexual, but like a pat on the back or a hug. And he would buy me drinks from like Starbucks. Eventually, me being paranoid, I told my parents about how he was treating me, and they took it up with the school. I don't know what happened after that. No one ever told me. My brother had him for half a year the next year, and then he vanished. No one knows where he is or what he's doing. He hasn't done any teaching since my brother had him, and no one can track him online. Next story. And ask Reddit that I can tell a story. So, 2 stories, same guy. When I was in freshman college, I joined a local journalism club that was headed by the college's Dean's List fave. Y'all, he was charming, smart, skillful. I had one of those schoolgirl crushes on him and literally would clam up during our bi-monthly meetings. He graduated but came back around my junior year as our professor for one of our majors. Not surprisingly though, he was a great teacher. And out of college, he got a job straight into the industry he aimed for. He also, however, was a ladies' man. Girls at class would fawn over him. Even a few of the gay girls went a little straight for him. Some of the girls were supposedly aggressive for his affection and would corner him physically, supposedly. I know most of this by watching my classmates give him the dreamy eyes and also through him. But anyway, every Saturday when I got back home, almost like clockwork at 9 p.m., he would call me and we would just talk. Mostly me advising him not to cross the line with the students. At this point, I saw him more as a big bro figure. Not everyone knew that me and the professor were friends because I never told anyone my involvement in the club. Fast forward to grad, literally there was a cat fight amongst the girls about him. Rumors were already flying that he slept with 2 to 3 students. When I came up to hug him goodbye, he told me, "I'm no longer your teacher anymore." And I thought none of it, until he came to see me at work months later and out of the blue kissed me. I had to stop him because he wanted more. After that, the guy totally bailed on me cold turkey. He still taught at the same university I went to. From what I know and heard, he has slept almost with 1 student for every graduating class. Ended up getting 1 pregnant, which the school desperately tried to cover up, and sadly, he bailed on that girl. He got fired from his job because he slept with the producer's wife. Worked in a different broadcasting company as an IJ, but got in trouble recently for slander and defamation. From what I still hear, he still teaches at the university that we both graduated from. Next story. When I was 18, I sort of dated a teacher in my high school. He was 28 or 29. It was ridiculous but super appealing at the time. He made me feel like I was so smart and capable and different. He dumped his girlfriend of 3 or so years over it, and he ended up getting fired after I brought the affair to the school's attention a year or so after the fact, simply because there was an incident that greatly affected me. It occurred a few months after I graduated, actually. So I agreed to go to dinner with him. We were no longer seeing each other at this point, and he kind of low-key kidnapped me for a night. Stuck in a hotel room with him, and he tried to get me to do drugs with him. He ended up just drinking till he passed out, but I was too scared to leave for some reason. Had a huge panic attack and felt very ill about the whole thing. Really didn't want that happening to another student, so I gathered the courage to tell the administration. Weirdly enough, though, we're not on bad terms now, and I believe he's happier than ever, and he has a fiance and a dog. He's not a bad dude, just did some dumb things when he wasn't in a good headspace. Next story. So, late to the game, but here's a good one. Handsome guy just out of college spends a year teaching in a small mining town in Colorado to make money to go to med school. Part of the job is coaching the girls' basketball team. One thing leads to another, and he winds up marrying one of the girls, a tall center on the team. After much whispering and innuendo, off they went to the big city of Chicago. Him for med school at Northwestern, her at the Art Institute of Chicago. And those were my grandparents in 1914. They were happily and prosperously married for 60 years until he passed away, and she followed soon after, mostly of a broken heart. Next story. I'd just finished my first year of law school and was slated to study abroad in China that summer. So a classmate suggested we take a basic Mandarin class so we know some of the basics before we go there. Sounds like a good idea, so I sign up for it and notice the teacher is a cute, relatively young Chinese woman. At the end of the class, I start talking to her and friend her on Facebook. We keep chatting and she invites me to a party she was holding. I go, we hit it off and keep chatting it out, and eventually I kissed her. She kissed me back, and we started dating. I had a great time with her, but then she moved back to China. She's the one who got away. Next story. So, I was a senior in high school, and he was a substitute teacher in his early 20s. It started with some very mild flirting. Our faces would light up when we saw each other, and I was so wrapped up in the idea of him. He wrote in my yearbook a message that really made me realize it wasn't all in my head. So, we happened to crash the same party a random weekend, and he was hammered, but it was honestly so much fun dancing with him and the feeling like it might just happen. Somehow, his buddies got wind that I was in his high school and literally dragged him away and drove him home. I totally get why they did that. They probably saved his career that night because I know what would have happened and us dancing could have gotten him fired. And it was dirty dancing. He never came back to sub until I graduated. I ran into him years later and I could still see the struggle in his eyes. Sincere smile, but worried because we were from a small town. I wish it would have happened. My kitty has never been as wet as that night. Next story. Well, you see, it was during summer break. I was working construction for my dad's company. I ran into an old teacher of mine after a day's work. We started chatting and she eventually offered me a ride back to my place. Things just kind of started to kick off after that. You know, until people found out about us hearing the gunshot for a potential murder. My friends found she had a secret gun and I had proof she was using a fake ID. Then she ran away from town. Good times. Good times. Next story. So, my first year in college, I was in an LDR, but I signed up for jujitsu classes because my boyfriend was taking it back home, and that way we'd have something in common. My sophomore year, I loved jujitsu so much I just kept taking it, but we had a new teacher. He was really charming and friendly, and I crushed hard. I broke up with my boyfriend a month afterwards and started dating my teacher. We had a few weeks together, but I wasn't up for sex at the time. Then his ex blows into town, having left her abusive husband, and my teacher drops me like a hot potato and never explains a thing. Next few months, though, were really weird. They got together and she flaunted her status at me, but never in a mean way, if that makes sense. But then something shifted. The teacher's most ardent student ended up dating his girl, and they both left the dojo in a whirlwind of rumors and accusations. Teachers spun the story so that they sounded like raging maniacs who had hate boners for him, and since we trusted him, we believed that. Then summer came and went, and a second version of the story trickled out, painting the ex and her new lover into light, which just cast uncomfortable doubts on my teacher. I dated the ex's brother for a while my junior year, so senior year came and went. And every quarter, even summers, I took jujitsu. I was the highest ranked female in the dojo, prepping for my black belt exams. Teacher kept telling me what an example I was to the other girls, but he was casually sexist to me in front of the class. We'd have tons of private meetings just about the class and stuff, but he was getting me alone a lot, earning my trust back. We got back together, though, after I graduated. I stayed in that town because I wanted to start my own dojo someday. I was that invested, and he knew that, and he used it against me. And then, once he had me trusting him and all to himself, he ramped up. He asked for sex, but that wasn't something I was up for. I was comfy being a virgin, thank you very much. So he stopped asking and just essayed me, smiled afterwards like I had consented, and I was so wrapped around his finger with all his manipulations that I didn't know what to do. He'd just taken what he'd wanted and pretended that we were equal, consenting in a relationship. His confident version of events was the most solid thing I could find. So for a couple of months, I fell right into his trap. And the sex sucked in retrospect, I can see that now, but I had no reference markers. Then he just waltzed off from whatever the abusive craptastic relationship we had. He banned me from the mat for a few months for trying to defend myself against a totally made-up accusation he spun one day because I was trying to self-improve tactic, and he thought I was targeting him or mocking him. He'd been a psych major, by the way, so he knew all kinds of things to use on me to get me to doubt myself, rely only on him, suspect my friends, and take his word as effing gospel. And I'm skipping over years of weird crap that didn't make any sense until I looked back from years down the road. Basically, he was a narcissistic sociopath who set up shop on a private Christian college campus where naive teenagers would trust him and not know better when he started making his moves. He had sex with as many of the girls in his classes as he could seduce over 6 years. I only know of 4 that actually slept with him, though. The rest of the girls in the class simply left and never returned. Did he have sex with them and then walk away, or were they just too creeped out to come back and too embarrassed to say anything? I'll never know. Then he palled up to the guys in the class, they did no martial arts after all, and became their best buddy. He'd mine their conversations for clues about what they liked, and then he'd research that and like it too. The guys all looked up to him as a strong, decent, enter your most admired adjective here guy. He did the same thing with the school administration and the counselor's office. One kid in our class had a dad in one of those jobs and a mom in the other. He was class pet because teacher needed his family's protection in case any of the girls he knew damn well he was gonna target while he worked there dared to complain against him. But I got him fired though. Me. I did that. After I was allowed back on the mat, since I wouldn't give up and go away, a girl from a distant dojo suddenly showed up at class one night, walking in with the teacher. I knew the moment I saw her that she was his next target. I had been too messed up to save myself, and he carefully crafted that situation just for me. I now realize, but no way was I gonna sit back and watch it play out on another girl, whom I knew from talking to her previously had already been date SA'd. F that guy. So I spoke to the assistant teacher and got an investigation going. He collected statements from way more people than I knew to be involved, and the head of the jiu-jitsu organization booted him. He left campus, left the dojo, and was not welcome back. He took his current victim, the girl who moved there with him. That still gets me though. She refused to believe everything we presented, defended him, and I hope to God she's okay wherever she is. As for me, I ended up with PTSD, more from the long-term psychological abuse than from the essay itself. Spent the next 3 years lulling myself into sleep with fantasies of murdering my teacher. Took me 12 years before I understood what a sociopath is. 17 to properly begin to deal with the PTSD. And now, I get paid to write murder mysteries. It's not all bad, and in retrospect, I think I was pretty badass standing up to him despite everything he put me through. Kinda wish he actually was dead now, though. He's likely out there doing this crap to someone else right now. Next story. I dated my economics teacher my senior year of high school. I had him my junior year as well, and we always had a thing for each other. If he would hear me say I was cold during class, he'd throw me his jacket and let me keep it the whole day, and I would drop it off after class. He'd make food and bring me some. He knew I loved sweets, so he'd make cupcakes and cookies and treats of things he thinks I would like and sneak them to me after class. I became his TA junior year because I needed hours, and it just kind of unraveled from there. By senior year, everyone knew what was going on, but we were all about to graduate, so no one gave a crap. The principal had some suspicions, and he absolutely hated my teacher with a passion, and the feeling was definitely mutual, and had him moved to the classroom next to his office so he could keep an eye on him throughout the year. The principal was the definition of a jerk, honestly, and did end up getting fired the year after I left. But I ended up having my econ class as my last class of the day, so I would stay after class until the principal would leave, and then we'd leave together. He ended up finding out about us the week before I graduated, but he couldn't do anything because the teacher and I were both leaving the school. He got a job offer elsewhere, and of course, I was graduating. We never continued anything after I graduated since I was moving away and he was on to bigger and better things, but it was a fun little fling. He was getting out of a very nasty divorce, and I was his distraction, and it kept me out of high school drama with immature guys, which I definitely do not regret. And for those of you wondering, yes, he did curve my grades for me. I am awful at economics, and he helped me pass his class to keep my GPA and graduate. No regrets, honestly. Next story. So, my dad briefly taught my mom when she was 13 or 14, and he was in his mid-20s. They met again years later when my mom was in her mid-20s, by which time my dad had gotten married, had my half-sister, and subsequently divorced her mother, and it was purely coincidental that he had once been her teacher. My parents celebrate their 20th anniversary this summer. Next story. So, does a TA count? I was in my sophomore year in college, and he was a grad student TA for my computing engineering class, and he was super cute, and I would go to his office hours on the premise of having questions about my assignments, but pretty much just flirt. Last homework assignment of the semester, I wrote, "Call me" in French, and he was from France, with my phone number on it, and he did. We dated for a short while, and it was cool. Sweet guy. Next story. So, I dated my kinesiology professor during my second year at a university. We started emailing, and one thing led to another. He was a good guy, but he seemed off. One night, after sex, he had asked me to leave. The next day, I came over to ask him if everything was okay, and he told me, "I don't know what I want, but I know it's not you." And the rest of the semester was very uncomfortable. One other student knew, and she would mention how he acted strange around me. Next story. So, I've got 3 actually. My martial arts teacher, when I had 18 and he was mid-30s, we struck up a friendship over learning Mandarin, and when I went to college, he asked me to watch his dog one weekend, and I went over to meet the dog for the first time. We drank and made like bunnies for a few months. My first time, as it were. It ended kinda rocky, and we don't exactly talk anymore. I think we both knew it was pretty effed up. Then there was my Chinese Lit TA my sophomore year of college. She tutored me in Mandarin, and let's face it, I didn't need it. We spent a ton of time together for a summer, and she went back to China to see family and wound up staying. It was fine, we talk sometimes, and her girlfriend now is a super hottie, and I'm happy for her. And then finally, I am now currently engaged to a professor. He wasn't my professor technically, which is good because he swears up and down he wouldn't have dated me if I were his student, but I think I would have beaten him though. But I was his friend's RA one summer at a summer school for foreign kids kinda deal. Things went to crap and we spent a ton of time together just fixing it. The job was horrific, but I'm happy with the results. He's 20 years older than me, and it's working just fine. Coincidentally, he works in distance ed, so I'm teaching him Mandarin, and I feel like I've come full circle. Clearly, I have a type. My parents are not thrilled. Alright everybody, so let me ask you, what's the over-under that daddy issues are at play here? I'm not judging, but I'm just saying it feels like daddy issues.
What do you mean I had problems with my father and now I only want to date men who are 10, 15, 20, 30 years older than me? That has no correlation.
Girl, what? Sigmund Freud or something like that. I don't know. I never read about him. But anyway, guys, this was a entertaining video, slightly distressing at times, but we made it through it, and it's not a medical video. Those are the depressing ones. Or the 911 responder videos. Those are really dark. But this was comparatively less dark, so I guess we can take some comfort in that. But anyway, guys, feel free to comment. But thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a really good day. Bye-bye.